Hey guys, back out here at the shed, and I went ahead and pre-cut everything for the trusses except for the pieces of plywood that I'm going to use for the plates or the gussets, however you want to call them. But I'll show you what I've got set up here and kind of explain how I did it. So what I did was, hold on one second. Okay, we're back. I had to grab my combination square, or speed square, whatever you want to call it. But there's a ton of videos out there on how to build trusses, but there's not a ton of information on how to determine the angle of your bottom cord at the corners. So this top portion is easy. There's a little symbol here that says pivot, and in order to get this angle, you can use this cheat here that tells you your pitch. So if you want a 4/12 pitch, you'd go to the 4, pivot it and rotate it out to the 4. We did a 6/12 pitch, so I pivoted here, and that gives us our 6/12. It's lined up here with 6, and then our angle is lined up. And you just cut that angle for both of these. And what I did was, after I had those two cut, I took my 12-foot span and I laid it down and I blocked up the peak with another 2x4 so that I could lay these sections out over the top of the bottom cord. And then I just marked my line at the bottom cord of where I wanted to be. Now I had to make sure that my measurement from the peak to the inside here was the same on both sides, and then I also made sure that my length of extra hanging out, or I guess you could call it the overhang that I had hanging out, I measured that distance as well to make sure they were equal. And then I cut my angles in the bottom cord, and the last thing I did was trimmed up the end of my upper cord, I guess you could call it. But I left about a 4-inch overhang because I'm going to have a 16-foot 2x4 that ties all the ends together, and I don't want to have a whole lot of overhang because I don't want it to interfere with the door opening up top. And I'm going to leave this cut at an angle like this instead of having it straight up and down, because that's just the look that I want. So now I've got everything kind of blocked in. I'm actually going to remove this block here because you don't need it, and I want to install a center brace, and then I'll start cutting out all of my plywood pieces that I need. So let's get this stuff moving along, and we'll start cutting plywood chunks and you'll see it come together. Okay, well, I did a little bit of work off camera, but that's because I only get like an hour here and an hour there, because I try to work on this between working for the state, working for Rudy, watching my daughter, and all the while trying to keep some sanity. So I'm just going to kind of go through what we've done here. These are all the middle trusses. I've got one more middle truss to go that's down here on the floor. I just got to finish putting the truss plates on, which I cut out of plywood, and there are 64 of them that I had to cut, and that took quite a while. But basically I just cut out a rectangle for the peak, and then I cut the angles for the peak. The center support, I just used a piece of rectangle plywood, and then the ends I did the same thing. I cut a rectangle and then I cut the angle that aligns with the top cord of the truss. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So this is the last center truss. There should be 7 of these, and then there's 2 end trusses, and on the end trusses I scabbed in a extra support because that's where the panel will line up for the siding. And I only put braces on one side, or I should say truss plates. I only put them on one side because the other side will be held together with the siding. So I'll go ahead and set the camera up. You guys can see kind of how I'm doing this. Sorry, I'm moving the ladder around. I'm using a product called Liquid Nails. I don't know if you guys know about this stuff or not, but I'm putting that between the truss plates and the 2x4s, and then I'm screwing everything together. So what I do is I lay out my truss plates, get everything lined up, and then I scribe lines so that when I lift them up to put the liquid nail in place, it doesn't screw anything up as far as placement goes, and it only takes a second to scribe lines. So let's see, we need one more for the other corner. Roughly something like that. So we'll get all those scribed out, put the glue down, and then we'll go through and screw everything in. And then I've just got the one last end truss to build. So let me get the camera set up, and you guys can kind of watch what I'm doing here. In case you're wondering, yes, this is a lot of work. Building your own trusses is a lot of work. And I tried to use whatever scrap plywood and 2x4s for the center supports that I had to try to save money, because $8 per 2x4 is a lot. I'm kind of racing daylight here, so I apologize if I go a little bit quick. I also have to be up at 4 a.m. for work, and it's pretty close to 8 o'clock right now. Screws that I got were 2-inch screws, and they're just long enough to go through the 2x4 and the plate, so I can step on these and it kind of is like little tacks or spikes to keep the plate in place. guys kind of get the point. I just go around and kind of put an even amount of screws in each piece. So I'm going to finish this one up and then we'll move on to the last end truss. Okay, now we get to lay out the last truss. And I'll tell you, my knees and my back, they're feeling it. Okay, now the advantage to this one is we only got to put truss plates on one side, so a lot of you guys might be asking why I decided to use plywood for the truss plates instead of those stamped steel pieces. And the simple answer is because I already had the plywood. I would have had to buy the other pieces. So that's why. Alright, time to glue and screw. Alright guys, it's a couple days later and we've got the trusses done, but I'm angry. You guys never have seen me angry, and I'm angry because I just got back from the store picking up lumber. You know, I needed a few more sheets of siding to do the end trusses, and then I needed all the sheets for the roof. Just 8 sheets of OSB. And in the last week and a half, just the sheets of siding have gone up $15 a sheet. This is ridiculous. I mean, I'm sorry you guys got to see me angry, but it's just, it pisses me off. You know, just when the guy gets just a little bit ahead and tries to do something, you know, the government and all the BS that they do, I try to keep everything political out of this channel, but I'm pissed, you know. But anyways, I'll give you a quick rundown of basically what a finished end truss looks like. So we've got, you know, the end plates, which you saw before, the middle support and the plates there you saw before, but I added in these extra braces for where the siding lines up, so we got something to screw it to, and that's on both sides of the middle support, and that's the other end truss hanging up there. And these are all the middle trusses, so there's 7 middle trusses and then 2 end trusses for a total of 9. And we had to cut 64 plates, truss plates, 42 by 4s, and I'm hoping we can return some of this siding, but I don't know. We'll see where we end up. But I'm gonna start cutting pieces. I've already got the first piece for one side of the truss cut out. I should be able to get at least 2 pieces out of one panel. So we'll give it a shot and see where we're at from there. All right, and I'll try and cool down. But I'm upset. It is what it is. Okay, it's I don't know, a couple hours later, but we've got all the siding cut and mounted on the end trusses. We've got the other one over here, and you can see this 2x4 sticking up. I got one on each side. They're scabbed in just so when I flip up the end truss, I have something to both brace it and attach it to temporarily hold it. And then what I'll do is I've got a 16-foot 2x4. I'm going to screw to the top of this one, and I'll run it all the way across to the other one. And then from there we can start setting up our center trusses. So once we get that done, then it's pretty much ready for sheeting. So stay tuned for truss placement. Okay, we'll see how this goes by myself. No promises. It's not going to be easy. I don't know if I dare even move. I have to adjust this ladder. Do not do this at home. Biggest thing is I want to make sure that this is centered. So what I'm going to do is just tack this in place just lightly. That way I can get my tape measure and see where we're at centered. So hang tight. Alright guys, we've got it set in place. I did have to shim a couple spots just because, you know, wood is never straight that you get at the lumber yard these days. At least not at the commercial lumber yards or the big box stores. But everything's straight. We've got the truss centered. Everything's tacked in place. So we should be able to move on to the next one on the other side, which is this one. And then we can put up our 16-foot string across the top. And from there we should be able to start flipping up the other trusses. So stay tuned for that. Well guys, as you can see, we're burning daylight, and I did manage to get all the trusses on. I'm sorry I didn't show, you know, the whole process of swinging them into place, but You know, you saw me swing that end one up, and it's pretty much the same thing. You just keep going down the line until you got them all up. But here we are. And I've got a center tie that runs the entire length down the middle on the bottom cord, and then up top as well I've got this one that runs the entire length, and I've still got the 16-foot board at the peak, and that's what I use to line up my peaks, kind of as a guide. Some people run string lines. I just use that, and it seemed to work pretty well. But I'm going to actually take that down, and that's going to go onto the end or the face of the trusses. So it'll be underneath the fascia. It'll tie all the trusses together. And I've got one more that's going to go on the other side. It's not perfect. The trusses are all spaced evenly, but what's kind of not lining up was, and I knew it wasn't gonna, more than likely, but the grooves in the siding you can see are probably about an inch off, and I really don't care because it's just a shed. But it looks pretty good for, you know, my first time, and I'm just noticing now, but they're not exactly square. So the lines in the, I don't know if you guys can see that on camera, they're not exactly square, but there's going to be a fascia board or a trim board on that covering that gap anyways. And then same thing on the other side. All the corners will have trim on it. Underneath the eaves will have trim on it. So basically what we have next is pull that peak board off and then install the two ties that go from end to end on the ends of the trusses here, and then we'll start putting sheets on the roof. So it's coming together. I think the last thing we'll do is build the doors, but get the sheets on the roof, get the tar paper down, and that's probably as far as I'll get before I leave on my vacation. But that's gonna conclude this video of truss construction and truss erection. So, and again, I apologize for venting a little bit earlier, but I am beside myself at what the cost of lumber is, and it just keeps going up and up and up. But it is what it is. So the shed is it's taking shape. So thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for building with me, and you guys take care. Have a great night, and I'm going to bed.